Hey everybody, welcome to the Building Excellence Podcast. I've got Ian Davis with me today. Thanks for being on the show, Ian.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be
Yeah,
here.
absolutely. Well, if you wouldn't mind, kind of give us some background to you and growing up and what that was like for you.
All right. So I was born in Kingfisher, Oklahoma, big town of Kingfisher. Um, my dad has always been a pastor, and so he was a youth pastor there. And then when I was one, we moved to Oklahoma City, and he became a singles pastor. Um, and then over the next couple of years, we moved around a bit. We ended up landing in Birmingham, Alabama, for about 5 or 6 years growing up, and absolutely loved it out there. And then when I was in eighth grade, they came to us, and my dad said that he got a job at a church back here in Oklahoma City, um, where he could be kind of that closer to his side of the family. And so we moved back my eighth grade year, um, and that was it. Turned out to be the biggest blessing in my life moving back here to Oklahoma because I probably would have never ended up at Oklahoma State on the golf team up there and been able to meet all the lifelong friends that I have now. So that was kind of a little bit of my background,
Yeah.
early days.
Well, what was it like as you went from, you said you're eighth grade, you're in Alabama, which Birmingham's beautiful, by the way. But
Yes.
yeah, you're in eighth grade and you had to transition back to Oklahoma. Was that something that was challenging for you at the time, or was it something that you naturally had the ability to make new friends and so you're okay with it? Or what was that like?
I remember finding out and started crying because I did not want to leave Birmingham. Had all my friends, from growing up there, and was really upset. Um, but once we moved back and I started making friends at Deer Creek, it ended up, you know, being fine. I was young enough to, you know, still make friends, and luckily I wasn't already in high school, so I still had my whole high school experience to go through in Deer Creek. Um, and it ended up being the biggest blessing, I think, that we moved back.
Yeah. And were you always playing golf, all the course of being in Alabama and then back in Oklahoma the whole time?
Yeah, I always played golf. I would always go out with my dad. He's who kind of got me started in golf. He played with his friends growing up, and or while I was growing up, and I remember going out, and he would take me when I was, 2, 3 years old, and just kind of let me ride in the golf cart when him and his buddies were playing. And then eventually, as I started getting older, I would play with them. Um, and so kind of, I always played golf, but whenever I was in Alabama, football was kind of the king over there. And so I played football and basketball, baseball, kind of everything growing up. Um, Once I got here to Oklahoma, I only played basketball and golf until my junior year in high school. I kind of knew that golf was going to be my path and passion, and quit playing basketball to basically just solely focus on golf my last 2 years of high school. Kind of, I knew I wanted to play after high school and into college, and hopefully after college. And not having the off season to train and get stronger and practice a little bit because of basketball, I decided I'm just going to quit playing basketball and focus solely on golf and throw all my cards into that basket.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you talk about kind of transitioning it into just golf, but I feel like golf is something where, you have to get into it early on, or it may not be the case, but you tell me, you kind of have to play the game growing up, kind of get a feel for it. And I feel like, at least nowadays, it seems like everyone specializes at such a young age in golf. And then you have guys that come on the scene and they're like 16 years old or even
right.
somewhat younger. So was that something that was the case, or did you really kind of like at junior years, like, okay, this is what I'm going all in at? Obviously, you had talent, you were good at it, but was there some strides to make at that time?
For sure. I was not very good my first couple of years in high school. I will say this: I think that playing other sports growing up helped. Um, Not only the team aspect of it, but just not solely focusing on golf because I think, at least for me, I would have probably got burnt out really early on. Um, so one thing that if any dads ask me, ever, or if I'm giving a lesson to their younger son, I try and encourage them to, if they want to play other sports, to let them, because I think that's great. And being a multi-sport athlete, at least early on in your while you're growing up, is the way to go. Now, that being said, there are some of those guys out there now that just specialize in golf and they're superstars early on, and it takes uh, basically all their time. Golf is almost all year round, um, at least once you get to tournament golf, and so it's hard to play other sports if you're gonna try and travel and play a bunch of golf tournaments.
Yeah. And so throughout that process, obviously your dad played golf. Were your parents pretty supportive of you playing golf all the time and kind of going that direction?
Oh yeah, yeah. My dad obviously loves golf, and he wasn't going to push me one way or the other, but he wasn't upset whenever I decided to whenever I decided to only focus on golf.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, early on in high school, I remember my freshman year. Um, I had to I had to play a playoff with another guy on our high school golf team just to get on to the top five to play in state. Um, I ended up I ended up playing really well at state, and we won, and that kind of propelled me to, that kind of lit a fire a little bit under me to say, I might be able to be good at this game. Um, and I really saw strides whenever I stopped playing basketball and I was able to focus just on golf.
Yeah, I'd heard a story from Coach McGraw on you and kind of growing up. Like he didn't happen to see you too much on the scene until he realized that you were also, working while you were playing these golf tournaments and paying for the tournaments and whatnot. So talk a
Right.
little bit about that and what that was like, because that's a different and unique experience to go through that as a high school kid and playing in those tournaments and working on the side and doing all that.
Yeah. For all of the great things about your dad being a pastor, you know, uh, being a multimillionaire is not one of those. um, so, a lot of times, well, starting whenever I was in Alabama, I started mowing yards in the summertime. So that's what my dad did growing up, and he's like, this would be a great way for you to learn how to work and make a little money on the side. Um, and so I continued to do that, and started getting yards whenever I moved back here to Oklahoma. So a lot of times I would mow yards to start saving up money to buy new golf clubs, or if I wanted to play a bunch of tournaments in the summertime, they're not cheap, and traveling and doing that whole deal. Um, so I ended up playing most of my junior golf in and around Oklahoma, just because plane flights and the whole deal can add up quickly. And whenever I was around here, a lot of those tournaments are on the weekends, or whenever might have been. But I was mowing yards 2 or 3 days a week. So I remember it be as hot as it can be here in the summertime, and I would have a, say, 8 o'clock tee time, finish at about 1, and I'd go crank out about 5 yards after that, just to get some done so I didn't have as many the next day. So you know I think that was a huge benefit, um, just learning the value of hard work and all that, and sacrificing some of the time and having discipline to do that, you know, taught me life lessons early on, um, that would stay with me until, forever.
Yeah, and that's quite a unique experience. But as you look back, you're able to see your story as you play it out, where you're for anyone that doesn't know, mowing yards in the summer is hot.
It's hot.
And so also playing golf in the summer, you're going in the mornings, you're playing, a lot of a round of golf in the morning and then going right into your job in the afternoon where it's, it's the heat of the day. So for many people, golf already wears them down for playing 18 holes, right? So going right
Right.
into your
Yeah.
job. But at the same time, like it's something you valued, something you wanted, so you're willing to put the work in to do whatever it took to get there. And so you see that play out in your story. Can you remember the first time you maybe met Coach McGraw and talk about kind of the recruiting experience for you, maybe not just with him, but in general, and how that all shaped?
Um, yeah, I remember the first time that he saw me hit a golf shot. I didn't meet him that day, but I was at Kicking Bird in Edmond, playing a tournament, and I was on number 11, which was a par three. And I saw him walk up behind me, and I was as nervous as you can get because I knew this was the golf coach at Oklahoma State. I was a freshman in high school at the time, and I hit my shot. I don't even know where it went, and then he walked off and went to watch some other players that were better. Um, and after that, I didn't really see him much over that my freshman sophomore year because I wasn't really doing anything worth watching anyhow. Um, my junior year in high school is kind of where things um, picked up for me, and I remember I didn't have to be at school I think until maybe 8:30, um, and so I ended up getting up and working out before school. I went to the church gym and would get up at 5:30, go up there, work out, go to school, and then I would get out and go to the golf course until it got dark. And I did that every single day. Um, and over that time, I noticed how I was starting to get better and better and play better in tournaments. And because of my work and discipline going, getting up even when I didn't want to, it gave me more confidence out there knowing that I didn't think that anybody else in the state worked harder than I did. And so once I got to the tournaments, I was relaxed, and confident and knew that I was the best one out there on the golf course that day. And I think there's a lot to be said for that is whenever you do the small things over and over again, you feel like you belong, and that way you can just go out and play free. Um, so during that time after you know throughout the high school season I played great, and college coaches started to notice, and I didn't really know anything about recruiting. um, Early on, Wichita State started recruiting me, and some smaller schools here around Edmond, a couple smaller ones in Texas. um, but I kind of had my sights on, I wanted to go to a big school and play for a golf team that was, really good. I didn't know where that was going to land me at the time, but so Wichita State was awesome, D1 school. I went up there on a visit and met the golf team. We played golf and met the coaches and everything, and they offered me a full scholarship, and which was awesome. Well, after that happened, it's funny how other coaches start to start to
Yeah.
notice. And Coach Hibble down at OU, it was his first year down there, so he was trying to build a program, and he recruited me very very hard. And I grew up a big OU fan. My whole family's an OU fan. My brothers went there. Um, so early on, I kind of was like, well, I'll probably end up there. Well, then Coach McGraw came on the scene, and and the thing that I liked about Coach McGraw was, and talking with everybody, he was the same in recruiting as he was whenever you were there in college, as he was, with our donors and with the guys who are PGA Tour stars now. He's the same to everybody. He doesn't care who you are. He's going to treat everybody the same, which was great. You know, that was huge for me. Um, I remember a funny story. I got two funny stories about recruiting that
Okay.
I can think of. So the team is down at Oak Tree National playing a qualifying. So he calls me, and he's going to come over to my house, my parents' house, for dinner after they get done. So I went out and watched the team play that afternoon, and then I rushed back home before he got there to take a shower and get ready for dinner. Well, I take a shower and I'm going as fast as I can. I just grab a shirt out of my drawer, throw it on, and go out there and meet him. And and I walk out and he goes, "Nice shirt, Ian." And I look down and I had put an OU T-shirt on with Coach McGraw coming over to my house to eat. So I was like, "Yeah, probably not the best move there."
Didn't think that through.
He
Yeah.
always likes to joke about, I got Ian to commit, and the first time I ever went over to his house, he's wearing an OU T-shirt.
OU t-shirt. Yeah, that's an
Yeah,
awesome story.
yeah. So uh, I had, yeah. Uh, so I'd gone up to Karsten and played with a buddy who was a member, and Coach McGraw showed us around afterwards. Um, and then he asked me to come into his office and talk with him for a little bit. And I ended up sitting in his office for probably an hour, hour and a half talking with him. And he finally asked me, he said, "Why should I even let you on my golf team?" And I was, you know, kind of surprised and didn't really know how to take that. And I had always kind of chased after Taylor Gooch. He was the best in the state. You know, we were the same age, same year, and I'd always kind of chased after him because I knew he was going to Okie State, and if I wanted to go there, I needed to beat him. So Coach Murrell asked me that question, and I said, "Well, Coach, you got Taylor Gooch coming up here, right, next year?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I mean, I know it's not a national event or anything, but I just beat him at conference regionals and state, so I think that I could probably compete up here." And he he likes to tell that story, and I think he was impressed by that. But I just had the confidence to say that. And after that was kind of when he started really seriously recruiting me pretty hard. Um, and he was like, I know you're not going to go play national events all over the country, but you know, whenever you play tournaments this summer, uh, you just go out and impress me and beat everybody else, and we'll find a spot for you. Um, and fortunately, I was able to play some good golf and ended up committing um, the next year.
Yeah.
So
Well, you talk about that story being Coach McGraw's office and confidently saying that you feel like you could play on the team, obviously competing against other guys. But at the same time, as you look back within kind of the things you've talked about before, you gain confidence from preparation and all the work
right,
that you did, putting in the hours, getting up at 5:30 every morning, going to work out, going to school, after school, going to play golf. Like you can watch that gradual process of you building um, your skills, your confidence, that preparation. It gives you the ability to walk in there and say, and I think there's a word that really comes to my mind, and I think a lot of people that have done things at a high level possess, and it's just confident humility. It's not like an arrogance, it's not cockiness. It's just confidence in knowing that you put in the work to do the best of what you're capable of. At the same time, you know that there can be more that can be done, and so it's having this confidence masked with humility. And so having that about you, you can see why you were able to develop that because you put in the work. And that's something I don't ever want to overshadow. Is there's these behind the scenes moments that no one sees,
right,
but everyone likes to see the spotlight or the attention that you get from doing really well. But those hours compared to the hours that you put in, you know, are astronomically different. There's so much prep work that goes into playing golf. I don't know all the ins and outs of golf, but I just know there's a lot of work that goes into it, just like anything else. And just that story kind of exemplifies having that confident humility, but there's preparation that was enabled you to have that. So I definitely just wanted to point that out. So, you get to Oklahoma State, or let's just talk, you wind up going to Oklahoma State. And what was that first year like for you?
The first year was tough. um, we had three guys on the team that were in the top 10 in the world. Um, and you take five guys to the tournaments. So that pretty much leaves two guys going to the tournament out of about 12 other guys, 10 or 12 other guys. Um, and coming in as a high school kid, you think you're going to be a world beater and hopefully just make the team and play every single event. And I ended up qualifying in the fall. We had four tournaments in the fall. I qualified for the last two events, and played terrible in both of the events, and then never qualified again in the spring. Um, Looking back, I wish that I would have known that, I'm obviously going to be better my fifth year if I stayed a fifth year and redshirted than I was going to be my freshman year. Um, and I wish I would have redshirted, but the lessons that I learned because I didn't helped me a lot, I think. Um, but that first year, you know, moving away from home, going up to college, and we got guys on the team from all over the world, all different backgrounds. It was kind of a reality shock of just all of that background of all these guys, and they lived life a lot differently than I did, and then also the stress of school and golf, and so it was kind of a whirlwind of a year. Looking back, it's hard to even remember it. It's like a blur,
Yeah.
um, just because I was like, "What is going on?" And but also it was just awesome just to be there on the team, um, and hang with those guys and learn from them. Uh, but that, I think, as I kind of grew up, and that feeling wore off a little bit to where I kind of transitioned from being, you know, in awe of being there to feeling like I belong and I can help the team compete and hopefully win national championships. So it was that first year was tough.
Yeah.
So
Well, yeah, like you said, you're transitioning into a whole different kind of lifestyle, a new experience, a new place, playing golf with some really, really high caliber golf players on one of the best team in the country. So and that's the thing too. Behind the scenes is Oklahoma State. Their golf program has been top notch for a long time, and so you get to go be on this team, which I don't know how you compare it, but it's at the top. So
yeah,
you're there with all these high caliber guys from all different walks of life and backgrounds. And so one thing I do want to point out, like, it's great you set goals and you achieve goals, right? You work for those. You get to Oklahoma State, that was probably a goal to play at Division One, a great program, going to be around great players every single day. You get there and you talk about a little bit about being kind of in awe and like excited to be on the team and whatnot. But then at the same time, I would assume competition is really key for you, like being
hmm,
competitive, wanting to be the best you can be, and also wanting to to frankly beat the guys around you. Even though you're on the same team, you want to continue to get better and better. And so when you have that competitive edge, you get to this place where you're not just satisfied for being there. You want to
right,
compete, you want to be at the top, and you want to give your best effort in all you're doing. So I think sometimes it's easy to sit there and watch and see, oh well, it looks like he's had it made. But when you battle through adversity in those situations, talk about like your mindset. Like, how did you kind of mentally kind of grind away and keep chipping keep kind of climbing instead of just kind of declining?
yeah. um, well, I remember after that first year, um, and even after my sophomore year, um, I didn't really play that great. I mean, I played fine. I played, I think, all the events my sophomore year, so I made the team, which was great. But you know, there was kind of a transition to where the more work that you put in, and then you started to get better. I could see a transition over my next couple of years of not being satisfied just to make the team, but and this really helped me. But looking at it as, I want to be one of the best players in college golf. And so making the team shouldn't be a problem. And the more work that you put in to do that, you know, something that seemed really hard my freshman year, making the team, you know, seemed more like well, I'm going, so I want to be the best in the country. And so the mindset shift over my time in college, really helped me. And I remember sitting down with Coach McGraw after the fall, the fall season. I think my sophomore year. And what I appreciated about Coach McGraw was he was going to tell you what he thought. He would say it to you with grace, but he was going to tell you what he thought. And he was like, "Ian, your short game is just terrible." I was like, "Yeah, you're probably right, Coach." He was like, "I want you to go back. I want you to go back to the chipping green, and I don't want you to leave the chipping green all off season. So every single day, it's cold in the wintertime in Stillwater.
Yeah.
I was out there chipping, and the next spring I could see a transition of, whenever we went to tournaments, I was a lot more confident around the greens, and that translated into, getting it up and down a lot more, shooting better scores. And I always appreciated that about Coach McGraw, was just, saying, "Hey, you need to get better at this," and then coming alongside of you and helping you make a plan to do that. We sat down in his office and made a plan of, okay, how am I going to get just a little bit better each day, to where, we can fix the situation. And I continued that work throughout my career there, and then into professional. And short game and putting around the greens was something that I ended up getting pretty good at, and I always attributed that back to, sophomore year of college, Coach McGraw sitting me down saying, "You are terrible around the greens. Let's get better at this." So
Yeah. Well, talk about, were there sacrifices you had to make along the way, and what were those that you had to kind of sacrifice and put on the back burner to be able to kind of excel in the ways you wanted to excel in golf?
yeah, I mean, um, in high school, obviously, I had to get up early. I made that decision to get up early and work out. And I had a plan to do that because I wanted to gain some strength to hit it farther. And so I worked with a guy, and he helped me plan out what I needed to do in that regard. In college, I didn't have the typical college experience. Um, Basically, what a day looked like for us was wake up at 6, workout started at 6:30, and then class, started at 8:30 or 9:30, depending on the day. Everybody had to be out of class by noon because we all ate lunch out at Karsten Creek every single day. Coach McGraw would eat lunch with us, both coaches, and they were good about knowing, all of these guys are coming from all across the world, and they're all the best amateur golfers in the world. So they don't necessarily, and they're everybody's highly motivated, so they don't need their hands held per se, but they also, need a little bit of direction. And so he would ask us what our plan was for the day in practice. That way he could help us execute that plan, which was great. So anyways, we'd go out, practice the rest of the day, till dark or whatever it was. And then most of us had tutoring in the evenings to help us with our classes that either we had missed because we were at tournaments or whatever. You do that till 9 or 10 at night, go back to the apartment and do it all again.
Yeah.
So, some of my buddies from high school that were up in Stillwater at the same time, they're, "Hey, come over and hang out." It's 10 o'clock, and they're just kind of getting started. They're not going to bed for another 4 or 5 hours. I'm
Yeah.
like, "Boys, I'm tired." So I didn't get to, maybe hang out with friends quite as much as a normal college kid, or maybe sleep as much. I remember one of the guys on the team, we walked out of the stadium after workouts one day and the sun was coming up and he's shaking his head. I said, "Brad, what's your deal?" He said, "I've seen more sunrises than any college kid should ever have to see."
That's awesome.
So yeah, but it was for sure all worth it, obviously. But sometimes it was hard at the time. We never got a spring break. We'd see pictures of everybody going to Destin or a beach somewhere, and I remember one one spring break I was in Stillwater, and it monsooned for a week straight,
Really?
and I'm looking at pictures of people on the beach, and I'm like, man, I'm stuck here in Stillwater and can't even go out and practice or anything. It's been raining for a week straight. Um, so in the time that was a little bit tough, but you know, once we got to tournaments and got to represent Okie State at those tournaments, and you know, we were fortunate enough to fly sometimes private to tournaments and go to these amazing golf courses. And then you're like, okay, well, having to get up a little early and work out sometimes, or miss a spring break is all worth it whenever you get to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things, it's funny. That's an awesome little story, but at the same time it's so true. Like those are sacrifices you have to make when you're a college athlete in some capacity. It's a trade-off, right? If you want to
Right.
be at that level and you want to compete for national championships every year, that's what you got to do. If you want to be the best, that's what you got to do. And so I think that's what separates people is, people that are just going to school, it's kind of that average lifestyle. Well, if you want to compete at a high level, you're not going to be doing that average lifestyle. You're going to be doing something different. And so, in order to achieve goals or do something, we have to do something different sometimes, that things may not obviously be the way we want them to be, ideally, for fun or whatnot. But in order to get that level, we have to put in the work, be consistent about it every single day. Like you talk about, pretty much repetition every single day. And that's
Right.
something that I've found is that if you look at some of the best teams and organizations across all sports or even in life, I'm sure in business too, but it's what makes people great is kind of that consistent, honestly, monotony. Like it's just
Hmm.
over and over and over and over again, but it's doing the right things over and over and over again. Um, so at times, like even when you're in those situations, it's not that fun to go through, but it's worth it, and what's going to be
Yeah.
out on the other side if you put in the work. So that's a great example what you're talking about of that. I want to transition a little bit into you had a coaching change. Coach McGraw wound up leaving Oklahoma State, and you had a new coach come in. Talk about that and what that was like, because he's a guy that kind of recruited you. You were around. You really respected and admired for the type of leader that he was, and for the
Hmm.
person that he was as well. Was that a challenging time for you as you got a new coach, or what was that like?
Yeah, it was a challenging time for the whole team, just because that kind of came out of nowhere. We had a hard last year or so. Um, just weren't nobody was really playing good, and Coach McGraw will even tell you he wasn't himself. Uh, he wasn't acting like the guy that we all knew that he was. He wasn't the same guy that he was in recruiting, and um, and that kind of all I think transitioned down from him. We could feel his angst and stress a little bit, and I think that kind of flows down to his team because he's the leader. Um, and so we weren't really expecting it. Um, and Coach Bratton took over. Coach Bratton's great. Um, they're just different. So we kind of had to figure out what the chemistry on the team is going to be now. At the time, that next year, it was me and Taylor Gooch were the seniors, so we were kind of the leaders of the team, and we had to figure out how are we gonna how are we gonna do this with Coach McGraw. or without Coach McGraw. What's it going to look like? Um, and I remember, he called me, told me that he had gotten fired, and I didn't see him for another, basically from when we got back to Stillwater from the national championship to um, our first event of the fall. So it was a good 2 or 3 months.
Oh wow.
And I remember seeing him, saw him at Olympia Fields in Chicago, um, and gave him a hug. And he was actually walking around with me all day long that first day because he was following a kid named Trey Mullinax, who played for Alabama. So that was interesting. It was kind of surreal that he was, walking there with me, but he was wearing red, which I thought he was allergic to, but now, but now he's wearing red. Um, so yeah, it was a weird kind of time, at least the first month or two of school. And then we kind of, figured out who our team was. Um, and, you know, fortunately played really good that year as a team. And so Coach McGraw went to Alabama as an assistant after that year, and we met them in the finals of the national championship. So I don't think something like that will never happen again, where he was a coach for a team in the national championship, and he had either recruited or coached every single one of those players,
Yeah.
all 10 of them from both teams. And, you know, uh, it was a hard day. It was a really hard day. And I'm sure it was way harder for him because he was kind of torn, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that was, I think, the one of the best things that's ever happened to him. And I've heard him say that, just being able to go to Tuscaloosa, spend some time over there, get his mind right. And now I think he's back to the same Coach McGraw that he was, back when he was coaching high school at Edmond North. Just loving coaching, loving golf, and his team down there at Baylor now, I think, can feel that, and they've done very well and played good the last few years because they have the Coach McGraw that we all know who he actually is.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and talk about that experience. You're going into your senior year. You get to play for a national championship, and you talked about the really interesting situation where he's on the other side, uh, essentially with another team that's against you guys. He's not against you
Yeah,
guys, but in some ways he had to be. So,
yeah, yeah.
but for you, what was that like competing your senior year in a national championship? Talk about that experience, all that hard work, the preparation that you put in. You get to end your senior year competing for a national championship.
Man, that was one of my favorite days on the golf course, even though we lost. Um, we were up at Prairie Dunes, which is in Kansas. So we had hundreds of fans come up there and watch for the final day. And I remember that was probably the most nervous that I've ever been on the first tee of a golf tournament. Um, with hundreds of our fans around, all you can see is orange. And I'm not even hitting a driver. I got a 3-wood, so the face is a little bit smaller, and my hands are shaking.
Really?
Um, and I just remember thinking, this is what you come to Oklahoma State for. This is why we've done everything we've done for the last 4 years, because of this day right here. And it was unbelievable. I played really bad actually starting out. I think I was 4 or 5 down through 9, and um, ended up coming back, had a putt to tie the match, and missed it. But that was, that was what you come to Oklahoma State for. And one thing that I always appreciated about Okie State was, um, we have our Cowboy Pro-Am, which is our fundraiser day every year in the fall. And so we get to not only meet, but we get to play with our donors. Um, and so we get to become friends with them. We eat dinner afterwards with them, get to talk with these guys who are, business leaders from all over the country, and they're looking at us like they want to meet us, which is, which is weird. Um, you're a freshman or sophomore in college and you're talking with these guys, and Boone Pickens is walking by and everything. And after being there that first year and seeing that, and then getting to go out on the road and play, and you're wearing the orange, you know, it was different than anything I had been a part of before, because all of these guys are following you and cheering for you and rooting you on, and if we were playing in their city, they were coming out to watch us, and it was awesome being able to represent those guys, and know that they're cheering for you and rooting for you, and you know hanging out with you sometimes afterwards. If we're in their city, we get to go eat dinner with these guys. So it was awesome. It was like you knew you had guys in your corner rooting for you, whether you played good or bad. So
Yeah. Were there any guys from those experiences that you got to talk with and learn from that really impressed you?
um yeah, I mean, there was one of the guys that I met one year at our pro am is now my boss. um and so that relationship never would have happened without cowboy golf. I got paired with him in our cowboy pro am, and we kind of hit it off, and then stayed friends for, it was probably, I don't know, 10 years after that before I ever came to work for him. But we would play golf whenever I was back in town from playing professional events, and stayed friends, and so now I get to be in his arena and learn from him, which is, it's kind of all come full circle. So it's
Sure.
been pretty cool, and there was, I mean, tons of other guys that I got to meet and talk with and learn from, um, which was, I mean, you can't ask for a better opportunity than that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that, as you talk about those stories, it's the relationships that you build throughout the process of playing golf or in life or at college or things like that that really shape us as people, and they provide us with these friendships that are lifelong friendships. So really cool experience there. So you guys played in the national championship. It didn't go exactly how you wished it would have, but you got to play and compete, and what a great experience. Talk about all the Oklahoma State fans that were there. So it kind of comes full circle, and then you wind up graduating from college. And you get to play professional golf. Talk about transitioning. You talk about transitioning your freshman year of college, coming into college. Now you're
Yep.
transitioning to professional golf. What was that like?
It pretty much mirrored my first stint in high school and my first stint in college.
Okay.
It was not great.
Okay.
um, well, I actually, the week after we played the national championship, I started out playing professional golf by driving to Cleveland, Ohio. Um, so I was like, well, welcome to pro golf. You're driving 15 hours to go play golf, to play a Monday qualifier. So I went up there, played the Monday qualifier, which is just a one round, 18 holes. It was like the top three or four of 150 guys get into the tournament, and I got in. So I was like, shoot, this is easy.
Yeah.
I'm in this. I'm going to be on the PGA Tour in a week.
Yeah.
And missed the cut, came on back home with my tail in between my legs, and for the first 2.5 months of me being a professional, I didn't make a cut, which means I made zero money. And I'm like, man, this is I don't know if it's going to work out. And I remember a huge turning point that first half a year being professional. I played a Monday qualifier in Kansas. Um, Monday qualifiers take forever. I mean, it was a 5.5 hour round,
Mm.
middle of summer. So I finish, I miss, and I'm playing in the Colorado Open the next week, a couple days later. So I finish my round and I'm driving 10 hours to Denver, by myself. You know, got tons of windshield time to think and everything. And I was just thinking back about growing up and playing golf and why I played golf and everything. And it kind of hit me like, I'm out here trying to play to make money. And, you know, that's all I've been thinking about. If you go out and play golf, just try and thinking about the outcome, whether it's money or the outcome of your shot or whatever it is, you're not going to do good. And I was like, man, I used to play just because I loved beating people and competing. And that's why you play golf. And so I was like, this week I don't care about money, how much this week's going to cost me. I don't really care. I'm going to go out and I'm going to act like I'm back, as a junior in high school playing at Kicking Bird in a golf tournament and just try and beat everybody's brains out.
Yeah.
And that's it. And so I ended up going over there to Denver, won the tournament, and I was like, okay, well, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
Why did it take me 2.5 months to figure this out? Or to remind myself, I had learned that in high school, I had learned it in college, and then, you take that next step in life, and then, you sometimes you got to remind yourself of, why you're there, what got you there. And, you don't have to reinvent the wheel sometimes. You just keep doing those small things and trust in the process. And, if you put in the work, a lot of times it'll work out. So that's the hardest thing about golf. And it's funny how golf translates so well into life. All the lessons you can learn from golf, you can pretty much mirror. It pretty much mirrors life. And if you don't think about the process and just what you have to do to succeed or to accomplish whatever goal that you're wanting to do, you're not going to be able to kind of live up to your potential. Some of the best times that I ever played golf, I wasn't worried about where it was going. I wasn't worried about if the ball ended up in the water or out of bounds or anything like that, because I was so focused on what do I need to do to hit this shot good here. And then you just walk up there and do it again. And it's funny, you do that 18 holes
Yeah.
worth, and it works out pretty good most times.
Yeah, absolutely. So you get in this kind of this state where you're kind of back to your old self. You have a good tournament and you keep playing. Um, what are the things that you did while you're playing professionally per se? Like what's your routine look like? Mentally, what are you doing to make sure you're staying focused on the right things and not to get overcome by the things you just talked about? Like
Mm-hmm.
describe a little bit of the process behind playing in professional golf.
Yeah, I think a lot of it for me is kind of feeling like you belong on that stage or belong in that tournament or whatever it is. And for me, the way that how that translates is putting all the work in beforehand and knowing that you've put in the work, you've worked harder than anybody else. You've been doing these small things and staying disciplined, beforehand, to where once you get on the first tee of a tournament, it's too late to prepare. We've done all that before. And I think there's something to be said for that, is the feeling that like you belong there, and knowing that you've worked as hard or harder than anybody else in the field that week. And that translates into being confident on the golf course. And I've seen that a little bit just in my short time working here. Is, you put in all the work before and all your prep work and everything. And same thing with closing deals in real estate or whatever it is. You put in the work before and the research before and everything. And then once it comes time to actually do it, you're ready to fire. So I think that's one of the things for sure golf has helped me with, and will continue to help me with in life, is, once it gets to game time, it's too late to prepare. And the worst feeling is stepping on the first tee of a golf tournament, knowing that you didn't put in the time, you didn't get up and work out when you didn't want to, and you're standing on the first tee knowing, oh boy, I don't know where this ball's going, and I didn't put in the work to be prepared this week.
Yeah, I don't know if
But
go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, for professional golf, it's hard a lot of times because you're you know long days long days outside practicing and everything, and a lot of times you don't want to get up and train or work out, and you'd rather eat a bowl of nachos at the end of the day instead of eating something healthier that's going to make you feel better the next day.
Yeah.
um, Professional golf is hard if you're not on the PGA Tour, and even if you are on the PGA Tour, it's a lot harder than a lot of people think, because all you see is you know the Brooks Koepkas and Phil Mickelsons of the world flying on their jets and winning tournaments. Well, there's a there's a lot of backstory for a bunch of other guys that don't get to do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, a lot of guys are driving their Jettas to a lot of their places.
that's exactly right.
Yeah. So, but it goes back. I don't know if you're a big John Wooden fan, but John Wooden had a quote: "Failing to prepare is preparing to fail," and so that goes a lot to what you just stated. And I think it goes to note too that there's so much of the mindset, like when you're doing something, work as hard as you can possibly do at it. But one of the things that I think about is that yes, you want to work as hard as you can in the moment, but just because you work as hard as you can in the moment doesn't mean it's going to translate if you haven't prepared beforehand. And when you
Right.
prepare beforehand and you work hard in the moment, good things will come. I mean, that's really, when you play sports, you understand that the best you can do is the best you can do. And at the end of the day, if you lose doing the best that you can do and you put in the prep, there's like a sense of peace. Like you still are competitive and you want
Yeah.
to win, but it's like I give my best effort. So there's really, I feel comfortable with that. I want to improve. I want to get better. But man, there's a sense of peace that you have doing that. And
Yes,
so
for sure.
when you do that, good things typically happen. So
Yeah, one thing that I think contributed to our success at Oklahoma State was when we were home. I mean, it was intense. Whether it was workouts or practice out at the golf course or qualifying. I mean, a lot of times qualifying for the tournament was harder and more intense than being in the tournament. And Coach McGraw and our assistant coach, you know, pushed us hard when we were at home, especially in workouts. But yeah, it was more intense at home a lot of times. And one thing I appreciated about both of the coaches, but especially Coach McGraw, was when we stepped on that plane and got to whatever city we were going to, he it was like he was the most relaxed guy in the world, no cares in the world, and he learned that from Coach Holder, who was intense at home, but once you got on the road with those five guys, all the work's done, and now it's time to go show them what all we've been working on back in Stillwater. And it was amazing how you could look around and all the other teams and the coaches were just wound up tight, and we were relaxed because we saw both of our coaches relaxed, not worried. They knew we were going to perform, and that translated down through the team and made us be a lot more loose but also confident, because we thought and we knew we had worked harder at home than any of these other golf teams. Um, so all that, and that was all preparation, beforehand.
yeah, and you had great leadership to obviously teach you that at Oklahoma State, and then you're able to take those things that you've learned into your professional life as a golfer, and so you get to play a couple of different tours while you were playing professionally. Talk about those
Right.
experiences, which ones you were doing, and what was it like to go play all these different courses that maybe you hadn't played before, or play in different countries that you never played before. Talk about that.
hmm Yeah. So for golf, it's a little bit like the lower levels in baseball, where you basically have three lower tours that feed into what's now called the Corn Ferry Tour. and the Corn Ferry Tour feeds into the Big Boy Tour, the PGA Tour. So the three lower levels are the Latin America Tour, the Canadian, and China. Well, there's no chance I was going to China. So I had two choices. So I actually went down to Latin America first because I knew it. I had known some guys that had gone down there in the past. And so first time I'm ever traveling out of the country, I was by myself going to Lima, Peru. It was either Lima or Bogota, Colombia. And I remember landing and everything's in Spanish. Everybody talks Spanish. And I was thinking, what did I just do? Luckily, I ran into some of the American golfers and was like, boys, I need help because I don't know what in the world I'm doing down here.
You should have had Grant Hickman come down there to help you be your
Yeah,
caddy.
yeah, I would love to see him down there. I did take my dad to Lima one year, and that was worth the price of admission right there. um, but yeah, so I played. So that first kind of 6 months after I graduated and turned pro, I just played around here, played mini tours and everything. Then my first full year out of college, first full year of professional, I went down there to Latin America, played down there, played pretty good. And the better you play on those smaller tours, um, it moves you up in what's called the Q school or qualifying school. And there's different levels that you have to get through. You got pre-qualifying, first stage, second stage, and final stage. So there's 4 stages. And if you play well on the smaller tours, Latin or Canada, you basically get to skip those stages, which is huge because you pay $5,000 to play one of the stages and play bad. Well, you're done and you got nothing to play in for the next year. You either go back down to Latin or Canada or play mini tours around the U.S. until Q school comes again in October. So those are some pressure packed weeks. So I ended up playing well, made it all the way through to final stage, and you got like 200 guys, 195 guys playing in final stage for 45 spots, and had one of the best weeks of golf of my life. Got second in the tournament, so I had basically a full year on what was then the web.com tour. Played that year, learned a lot of lessons. I didn't play any good really, and I think I played 8 weeks in a row at one point and was just dog tired. But I felt like I needed to keep playing to, try and move up the standings. When in reality, it would have been better to, take a week off and go back home and rest and practice, and then come back fresh when your mind and body can be a lot more sharp. So I learned that lesson. Then the next year I went and played what did I do? Oh, I went back down to Latin. And me and the Latin tour kind of had a love-hate relationship. I did not like going down there. I mean, like, I remember flying most of the time. I flew back into Houston from whatever country we were coming from, and I would just kiss the ground when I got back here to America. So I remember when I finally broke down there, we were in Nicaragua. It was about 98 degrees and 98% humidity all week. And my AC went out in my little bungalow I was in, and I was done. I told the boys, I said, we're going to Mexico next week. And I said, after we leave Mexico next week, I'm not coming back down here ever again. And they thought I was kidding. Well, a couple weeks later, everybody's booking their flights to go to wherever it was, Argentina or something. And, they're asking me when my flight is. And I said, boys, I'm not coming back. I don't have a flight. And so that was the end of my Latin America career. And the next year I went up to Canada, which was much better.
Yeah.
So, but that was kind of back to kind of how I started. Me and a buddy got in a Toyota Camry or something, and we drove from Oklahoma City to Vancouver. And that summer, it was a fun summer, because we got to see all of Canada pretty much. We drove most of the events and worked our way from the West Coast all the way over at Victoria to all the way over to Toronto throughout the summer. And even though I didn't play great most of the time, um, those experiences and stories and memories are worth it for sure. Just the life experience of getting to do that and compete every single week was a blast.
Oh yeah, you got a lot of flight miles going
Yeah,
down to South America, and then you got a lot of drive time in Canada. So,
that's for sure.
but at
Yeah,
the same time, you just talked about it, those experiences. I mean, what unique experiences that many people never get to have to go to all those different countries, no
yep,
matter what the humidity or the heat is.
right.
Getting to see that in different cultures and take that in, playing great, beautiful golf courses. I mean, you're still playing at the some of the nicest golf courses, both in
Yep,
Latin America and then up in Canada, and then obviously Vancouver in the summer is beautiful. So
yeah.
there's so many great
And
places.
yeah, and getting to go to those places, and I have one of my best friends went to China a couple different times, and getting to go down to those countries, especially in South America, you know, you appreciate where you came from, and you appreciate, you know, our country, and you get to see a side of the world that I wouldn't otherwise have gotten to see. There was no reason for me to go to Bogota, Colombia, or Lima, or you know the middle of nowhere, Uruguay, um, and other than going there for a golf tournament. And because I was there, I got to see all these things that I wouldn't have otherwise gotten to see. And so, it made me really appreciate being here and just growing up how I did. And it makes mowing yards in the summertime. You'd be begging for that a lot of times if you were down there. So that was really neat.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I guess transition into kind of making the decision to transition out of playing golf professionally and then getting into what you're in now, because that's not an easy transition. It's not something that's easy to think about. Like, okay, it's time for me to actually hang it up. Talk about your thought process there, and how do you discern, when it's time to keep pushing forward versus when it's time to maybe slow it down and then pivot in another direction.
Yeah, it not easy for me. It was probably a process actually over about a year or so. Because whenever you've done that for your entire life, pretty much, and my dream was to play on the PGA Tour. I told my dad would be talking with his buddies, and he'd say, "Ian, what do you want to do when you grow up?" And I would, I was 3 years old, and I'd tell all these guys I was going to be playing on the PGA Tour. Um, and so, you know, after the season in Canada, I could tell I just wasn't enjoying golf anymore. I wasn't having fun. I was living out of a bag for 35 weeks a year. I'd like to have a wife and a family someday. And even if you're on the PGA Tour, you're going to be traveling 30 weeks a year. And, I didn't want to not see my wife for over half the year, um, which would be tough. And that's one of the sacrifices that it takes to play on the PGA Tour. For as good as everything is on the PGA Tour, there's for sure sacrifices that are made. And so I just kind of started thinking and praying about it and talking with buddies and older guys. And I think every golfer struggles with this. Probably every athlete is having their identity found in athletics or whatever sport that they play. And I think that I struggle with that a little bit. um, over the kind of the year I was thinking about hanging it up. Um, but kind of finally just realized, my worth isn't in golf, and I can still play golf and enjoy golf and all that, but I don't have to necessarily do it for a living. Um, and so that's when I was actually playing golf with my boss now, and uh, he offered me a spot here, and and I took it, and it's been great. It's been a transition for sure. Uh, I get a little antsy being inside of an office sometimes,
Yeah.
but it's been good. And um, you can play golf your whole life, and I still got a little fire in my belly to go compete. So I won't be. I'm not completely done playing
Yeah.
by any means, but traveling for a living and playing, that 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 part's probably done.
Yeah. Well, you talked about as you're making these decisions, it was a process throughout that year, but you talked to your friends and then also people that you respect. Who are some of those mentors that you have? And talk about mentors, like how important is a mentor to have guys that you look up to and admire their counsel.
Yeah. Well, for sure, Coach McGraw has been a big one in my life. Um, Even after college, most coaches, I'm sure, once their players leave, or especially if they get fired, they're not going to be reaching out to their former players, and that's one thing that I have appreciated about Coach McGraw. Um, Another one that kind of became my mentor was our assistant coach in college, and um, I would go and stay at his house in Denver for the Colorado Open after school. He moved back to Denver, and he's working. And he was a great college golfer. He played at Oklahoma State, turned pro, and did the whole deal. And then he actually decided to stop playing as well. And he's probably 20 years older than I am. And so I called him up, and I chatted with him quite a bit about, what does this look like? How did you know that you wanted to be done playing? And just asked him some of those questions that are kind of hard to answer when you're thinking about giving it up. And took some of his advice. Obviously, talked to my parents, and you know, my dad my dad loved watching me play golf and loved all that, but you know, he also loves that you know I'm enjoying what I'm doing now and not beating my head against a wall playing golf. So um, yeah, that listening to all those guys really helped me out a lot, because they obviously shed some advice and light on things that other ways of looking at it that it's hard for you when you're in that moment in that situation. It's hard to look past that. What's that going to look like 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road? So
Yeah, just having great people around you to have wise counsel from people you respect and admire when you're going through some adversity and trying to make difficult decisions is really important. It's very key. And one thing I want to ask you about, you talk about wanting to always grow and be better, especially as a player, but as a person, even today, what are some things you do to grow as a person on a daily basis?
um, for me, I hate getting up early, but once I'm up, I love it. One of those types of deals. And so if I try and and get up, make a cup of coffee, and read for a while. Have a little Bible study, devotional, and for the first 20 or 30 minutes that I wake up, and that basically just sets the tone for the whole day. Um, and one thing that I've been doing here lately, I'm actually going next month on a elk hunt in Colorado. So your boy's got to get in shape. Uh, if I don't have something, I got a big goal for golf that I want. I got to get in the gym and do this without fail. Well, without that, I've been kind of searching for something like, because I'm never been a big gym rat. I don't crave going in there and working out or especially running. Um, but what's helped me over the last couple months has been this, this goal of I'm, going in the mountains and we're going to be backpacking in, we're carrying our camp on our back, and then hopefully we'll be carrying an elk out from the mountains. And so it's going to be tough. So I've been getting up and reading, doing my deal, and then going for a little run in the morning, and, then getting to work here by 8 or 8:30. And it's amazing how much better you feel. You're ready to go. You're confident, and as opposed to sleeping in until 7:30 and wetting your hair and getting up here to work. So
Yeah.
so that's been really good. Uh, it's been fun, and I'm looking forward. I'm glad that I am going on that elk hunt. I'm kind of got it's a different thing to work towards, but that's something that I started back in college bow hunting, and it was always kind of my escape from golf in the off season. I think no matter if you're working or whatever, you got to have something where you can just turn your mind off for a little bit, and that was kind of my escape for a long time in the off season for golf. And now, instead of only sitting in a deer stand, me and a couple of my buddies have kind of started looking for other ways to challenge ourselves, and going and killing a elk in the mountains will this is my first time,
Yeah.
but from what I've seen and heard, it's going to be tough. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be great. We're
Yeah.
going to be rough. We're going to be roughing it, and it's kind of my next challenge I get to look forward to.
Yeah, we need to have you on after that experience and you can talk about
Yeah, yeah.
it. If you
I'm
survive.
gonna, yeah. If I survive, I'm gonna try and video some of it, and kind of document it. I didn't draw a tag. My buddy Charlie did. So he's gonna be the one actually doing the shooting.
You're going to be
So
doing the hauling.
yeah, I'm gonna be the pack mule. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
He's on the Corn Ferry right now. He's got the 3 playoff events to try and get his PGA Tour card. He's flying from the last playoff event to Colorado. If he gets his PGA Tour card, he's going to spend 5 days hunting elk in the mountains, and then fly straight to his first PGA Tour event.
Oh man,
So
that.
yeah, it'd be quite the week if he could get his card.
Oh, if he gets his card, gets an elk in the mountains, and gets to go back and play on the PGA, that'd be pretty good a week. So
That's about as good as it gets right there.
yeah, well, what you guys need to do next is you need to take up boar hunting, where you corner the boar,
Uh-huh.
that,
Yeah,
and get
yeah. With a
get that on
knife.
video. Yeah.
I'll let our buddy Grant do that.
Okay. Awesome. Well, as we wind it down, some of the things you talked about are great lessons that you can apply in your life for sure. But I just want to talk about, are you a pretty big goal person? It sounds like you've always had goals, or is that something that it's just the things that come about you every single day?
I think that, yeah, I'm a goal person. Once you get those goals, I think that even more important than that is finding the process that's going to get you to that, because that's the things that you can. That's your plan. That's actually going to get you to where you're wanting to go. And without that, it's hard to get to where you want to go without a plan and a process,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
that process and plan is going to be the thing that's going to help you do those small things every single day that seem like they're not getting you anywhere, but you keep building on those blocks, and then eventually you look up and, oh, you know I reached that goal, it's time to set a new one. Let's keep moving forward.
Yeah, no question. So at the end here, we do a fire round. So I'll just say something. You can finish the sentence. Okay.
All right.
You can do anything if.
uh you're willing to sacrifice what it takes to get there.
Focus is.
Trust in the process.
Favorite vacation spot.
Mountains,
Mountains.
for sure.
Determination is.
Um, Having that fire where nobody's going to stop you from getting to that goal that you want to reach and getting to where you want to go.
Awesome.
No matter how hard it seems or what the odds are, uh, not getting discouraged and pushing forward no matter what you might think in the moment or what anybody else says.
Hmm. And you've kind of touched on these a little bit in our story so far, but what's your favorite? You have a favorite golf experience?
Uh, yeah, either the national championship that day I was talking about, or that win in Colorado was really cool. I had one of my good buddies on the bag, Ben Nemechek, and it was just a fun week. We he was great. He always says he's 1-0 on the bag. Uh, he can't be beat. And it was it was awesome. We were meshing. He was actually caddying really good, and I was just doing exactly what he said, and ended up winning. And that was one of my favorite weeks on a golf course for sure.
Hmm. Sounds like he needs to switch professions. So
Yeah.
it all comes down to.
Ooh. Um, Priorities. Having your priorities in line. For me, uh, if I don't get up and spend time in the Word in the morning, kind of set that tone, everything seems to get out of whack, and it'll
Yeah.
get out of whack pretty fast for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
So,
All right. Well, we're done with the fire round, so thanks for doing that. A few last questions is there if you could only share like one sentence to maybe your parents, because I know they were really influential in your life, what would it be?
to my parents or from my parents,
To your parents.
um, I would thank them, especially my dad, for kind of letting me find my own path without him, pushing anything on me. Um, at least, especially for golf, I decided that on my own, and because of that, I was willing to kind of do what it took to get where I wanted to go. Um, and same with my mom; both of them were as supportive as you can get, and have sacrificed more than I'll ever know, um, for me being able to just chase that dream for a long time.
Yeah, awesome. Is there a certain piece of best advice you've ever received?
Um, my dad always tried to instill in me and my brothers, having our priorities in line, and you get off with the Lord or with your family, and if your small circle isn't good, you're not going to be able to influence the world. Um, if that immediate circle isn't right.
Yeah, that's awesome. This podcast is called Building Excellence. What does building excellence mean to you?
Mm. Uh, Doing all those small things right. Um, it's those small little mundane building blocks, uh, and doing those right, doing those with excellence, um, that will get you to where you want to go.
Ian, thanks so much for being on the show. Really appreciate you sharing your stories and your lessons, and just really appreciate you coming on the show.
Appreciate you having me. That was great, Bailey, and I'll
Yeah.
give you an update whenever I get back from the mountains.
Yeah.